All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. I'd like to bring this meeting of the Delaware Astronomical Society for February of 2023 to order. First item, do we have any new members who'd like to introduce yourselves? Any new members?
Sydney don't count.
I don't think so, Chris. That's cool. Second thing, I'd like to announce that Jim Kirshen, who's here on Zoom, is now our education chair. Thank you very much for stepping up to the role. It's awesome. We'd also like to recognize Todd for his service for the last couple of years. Unfortunately, coronavirus, impacted his tenure as our education chair. He would have done a really great job, but he wasn't allowed to do anything. But Jim, I'm sure you're going to do an awesome job, and it'll be great.
Okay.
Next item. Thank you. Next item is the election. So this May, we're going to have the election for the, what's that?
Actually, let's do a real mic check because I've heard voices.
Oh, yeah.
They sound very faint. Hey, Jim, can you sing a little song or? Yeah.
New education chair.
Just say something. We wanted to do a mic check, Jim. It sounds like it's a little faint. Okay, you're good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, now it's better. Now it's better.
Yeah, it was at 25%. That was the problem. All right. So again,
Thank you, Jeff.
like I was saying a minute ago, we have an election this May for the at-large board members. They're every other year. And of course, the officers are the other years. So we have 3 board members at large, and their tenures are going to expire very shortly. So our election is going to be in May, and I will be running that because I'm not one of the board members who is running. Sydney is, so he can't run the election. So I'll be taking on that role for Sydney for this May. Please note, if you are interested in serving on the DAS board, it would be appreciated if you're excited to join us, as Jim Kirshen just did a moment ago. So if you are interested, please contact me by email or phone and let me know you're interested in running. If you are interested, you could also publish some information in the Focus about yourself and why you're interested in running, what you'd like to do in the position. We would need that by the March deadline or April deadline to publish it in the Focus. I think that's probably March 10th. I don't know where Mark is right now. Probably March 10th and probably April 10th. That's my guess. I'm not sure. He hasn't sent that date out yet. But if you are interested in publishing it in the Focus, that would be what you'd have to do. The last time to nominate yourself to be in the election as an at-large board member would be at the April DAS meeting in person. That'll be the very last moment you can decide you'd like to do this.
Or in person or over Zoom.
Oh yeah, over Zoom. Yeah, that's the same thing at the meeting. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, good. So please let me know if you're interested. Next item, the AP SIG. Bill, you want to announce that?
Right, so the next APSIG meeting will be this coming Saturday, 1 p.m. on Zoom. And we'll be talking about comment processing.
Oh, very good. And I did a little bit of that. I can say a little bit to that. Certainly. Very exciting. All right, Mary, did you want to say something about the book club?
Yes, I do.
Great.
I'd like to remind everyone to join us on Thursday at 7 p.m. for our discussion of the first Delaware Almanac, the Wilmington Almanac of 1762. We will be joined by a panel of guests, including 2 historians from Switzerland, a professor of agriculture from the Berea College, Amanda Zimmerman, who's a rare book librarian from the Library of Congress, who is in charge of the very rare copy of the Wilmington Almanac in their collection, and who lent us a copy, PDF copy of the Almanac, and sent us some photographs of the actual document. And one of the descendants of the Philomath, or the astronomical calculator of the Almanac, Jean Bow Strickland, who's also written about the Tobler family. She's a delightful woman from Augusta, Georgia. She's 87 years old, and she knows a whole lot about the Tobler family and their emigration from Appenzeller, Switzerland, to the United States. And just so you all know, Tobler, before he came to the United States, founded a Swiss almanac, which is in its 302nd year of publication in Switzerland. So it's an international symposium, and we hope to carry the work on Tobler forward throughout the year and be able to provide information about this document and Tobler to the library system and to the school system in Delaware. We also have a meeting coming up, the Quiet Zone, about the Green Bank area in West Virginia. And we also just signed on board Professor Hal Poe, who is a Edgar Allan Poe descendant, an expert in the life and work of Edgar Allan Poe, to join us for a discussion of a Poe short story in April, recommended to us by DAS member Jim Cower. And we're looking forward to that. Poe has a history in Delaware. Poe came to Newark, Delaware, to the Newark Academy before he died and gave a lecture. And the Newark Academy building is on the campus of the University of Delaware. So we may be able to have a little gathering at that location if we can arrange it. And in October, we also signed on board Laura Snyder, the author of Eye of the Beholder, so we can mark the anniversary of the death of Antony von Leeuwenhoek and the exhibition of Jan van Vermeer's work that's going on right now in the Rijksmuseum, which is gaining a lot of attention. So we have some great things on the calendar. Check us out at the website and join us, whether or not you've read the book or not. You can pop in, and guests are always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mary, we also have Roderick Hill.
Oh, yes. Oh, please, Jim, jump in, Jim.
Oh, okay, we have contacted Roderick Hill. He's the author of Adventures of an Eclipse Chaser. He's going to be meeting with us in which is it September? September. And he and his wife Monica are going to be giving us basically a firsthand account of their adventures in chasing eclipses from areas that have extreme political instability to inhospitable climates. Just the whole shebang. Should be interesting.
Very interesting. Thank you, Jim.
Eclipses in the United States.
All right, next thing, you wanted to say something, Diana, about the refreshments?
Yes, I'll be having my next surgery March the 2nd, so I won't be able to bring March and possibly April refreshments. So we need a volunteer.
All right, would anyone like to volunteer to bring refreshments? It's a very exciting job. She does an outstanding job every time she does it.
There is money for it.
There is money to provide you with money to get this service for us.
Well, then we don't have to sell it right now.
We don't. So if anyone would like to do that, please contact one of your officers and we can take care of it.
And Jim, could I take it you might also need to pick up those days as well?
Yes.
Okay. We'll arrange that and we'll be in touch with you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Always.
All right, next, Greg, you wanted to say something about a program.
Every year we have part of our outreach is with Wilmington Friends School. This has been going on for 20 years, I think. So it's that time of year again. The 7th graders are in their unit about astronomy, and they invite us to come out, bring some telescopes so the kids can see, you know, a little how to read a star chart, show them around the sky, and let them look through some real telescopes. So that's coming up this Thursday and Friday. I need a couple of more volunteers for a couple more scopes. We split this up into 2 nights because of the size of the classes. Historically, one night usually ends up just being a rain date for the other night, but or the second or the first. But if there's couple of people who could bring out a small scope, portable scope, just to show some seventh graders a few of the main things in the sky, it would be helpful. So,
Where and what time do you want him?
It will be, I'll send you the address. It's a personal home of one of the students. Parents volunteer their homes for this cool event. So I'll give you the address once you volunteer. Thursday and Friday, starting at 7 o'clock.
And if someone here wants to help but does not have a telescope, we could send you home with one of the loaner telescopes tonight.
Absolutely.
So.
Very good. My email is in the focus. So thank you.
All right, very good. Bob, are you there? Bob Trevelcock?
Yeah,
All right, can you tell us about dues and members?
yeah, we're beginning to wind up the dues collection for this year, I guess. We've had 109 members renew for the 2023 season. If you haven't renewed yet, you probably got an email from me a couple days ago. We encourage you to renew your dues so that we can get you, keep you as an active members. After the end of February, anyone who hasn't renewed for 2023 then will get moved over to our inactive list. And so we encourage you to renew before that. So again, thank you for everyone who's renewed so far. If you haven't yet, there's still a chance.
Okay. Very good. Next item on the list is later tonight, after we're done our presentations, we'd like to give people a chance to observe in the observatory. We have a nice clear night tonight, and we've done a lot of work in the observatory over the last couple of weeks to get things ready to go. And so you can come down and do some observing. All right, do we have any other announcements before we start our main program? I think I got everything on the list. Great. All right, Jeff, ready to go over.
So yeah, as seen in the focus, our program this month are member mini talks. We have a couple of us that are going to give some little presentations on a variety of topics. And to start off, you good to go? To start us off, Greg Lee is going to give a presentation on Delaware's State Star.
Little bit of trivia. Small state, every state's got their emblems and state this and state that. So most of us are Delawareans or close enough to Delaware. You got to know what the state bird is. The blue hen. Yes.
I know it's a football team.
The football team, the Fighting Blue Hens, you know, that one goes way back, let's see, 1939, it was established that the state bird of Delaware will be the blue hen chicken. Goes back to Revolutionary times when they used to have the cockfights and they would bet on each other's regiments. You know? So that's how we come to have the blue hen as our state bird. You know, interesting. It was the roosters that did the fighting, but we're the hens for some reason. South Carolina has got the Gamecocks. So they are the roosters, they're the hens, but who knows how these things come to be, you know. All right, you know, in 1939, what's the state tree?
Holly.
Holly.
Yeah.
Peaches the sixth.
Peach was the flower, state flower, peach blossom. So these things have been going on from 1939, and then that came along in about 1950. We got a butterfly.
Tiger swallow tail.
Sheila, Delaware Nature Society.
You win.
We also have a state macroinvertebrate.
That one cracks me up every time.
We've got, yeah, right. Yeah.
For those of you who are curious.
2005, they got around to doing, we've got a macro invertebrate.
My life, it just felt so incomplete until we had established that.
Other than Sheila, anyone?
Horseshoe crab? Is that the horseshoe?
No.
crab?
Oh, that's separate.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Macroinvertebrates, oddly macro, but it refers to the little guys in streams and stuff, like mayflies and things. The mayfly isn't in it, but it's close.
I
Big-
saw it, something critter,
It's
six,
non-microscopic.
six
it's
legs.
critter.
But the stonefly, right?
Yes. yeah.
Okay. Big and spineless.
That's right.
Basically, like some people.
Macro invertebrate. Oh, Delaware has some good ones. Well, we do, we have a state butterfly and we have a state bug. So it's tiger swallowtail is the butterfly and the ladybug. So we've got those. We even have a state fish.
Dogfish.
Weak fish.
Weak fish, yeah, the sea trout, but colloquially known as weak fish.
The weak now.
Is that the reason? I never knew why.
Okay, one more obscure thing, state airplane,
We got some.
serious.
F 22.
Palanca,
Palanca, that's right.
yes,
I don't know if that's on the official list.
it is. It was
It is.
just recently made state airplane.
Recently, that's new then, because my list ended up here around 2016. What I was saying, we've got a state dance. Maypole dancing. Delaware is, we've got a state mineral. Filamentite,
Sillimanite.
emphasis on silly.
Yeah.
Weak fish, silly mineral. Prickly holly tree. Chicken. We got a beverage, milk.
Okay.
Milk. Milk is our state beverage. And maple dancing. Here it is. Marine animal, state marine animal is the horseshoe crab.
That makes sense.
Prehistoric.
See a whole bunch of.
We got, who picks these things? Well, that brings me, yeah, the legislature.
Some other things, if you collect coins, I used to collect coins, and I was thinking, when the quarters came out, the state quarters, of course, we were the first quarter that came in.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was digging through my quarters a couple days ago, and I flipped it over, and it had Bombay hook on the back of it. Delaware Bombay colors.
That is a separate series, I think, of.
Natural wetlands or something.
It's, of national monuments or something. The quarters have gone into all kinds of categories.
I'm just surprised to see a Delaware Bombay.
But there's another, yeah,
So
okay,
there's
so
another something to add.
that Delaware can make a claim to, being the first state to sign the Constitution, so. But, in 2009. It was proposed that we have a state star. So what would you think? If there was proposal, wouldn't you go to the University of Delaware's astronomy department to get some nominations? Or Mount Cuba Observatory to help you make a choice? Or the Delaware Astronomical Society to make some suggestions?
Yeah.
That didn't happen that way.
State Senate.
It didn't happen that way. The Delaware Museum of Natural History, which Sheila also knows some about. was having a contest. And they were going to name, what should be the name for a state star. And so they ran a contest, and then this little 12-year-old girl made the suggestion that it should be called the Delaware Diamond. Diamond State, small state, but valuable according to Jefferson. So we're the first state. We're Diamond State, one of the nicknames. So that one won the contest. But the contest was from someone submitting an application to the International Star Registry. Oh boy, yeah. Which Emil Volchek used to have a little monograph paper out here at the entryway for people to read, and every January and February about this time, we'd start getting calls from people who got gifted for Christmas a star to take their name or the name of their loved one or something of that sort, you know, and people would call and want to see, can you show me my star? So you go to the website here and let's see. I can bring this up. It turns out that our state star, what is that? The International Star Registry?
Do they have permission?
Google, put that aside and look up. Our state star is. Oh, before I say that, let me back up a minute. There is another state that has a state star, that's Utah. And they picked their state star. Their state star is Alpha Ursa Major. That'll be the brightest star in the constellation Ursa Major. The lip of the hand, the lip of the bowl of the Big Dipper, part of the pointer stars, the Alpha star, and it just all kind of makes sense. Because when they were having their centennial, they decided, well, we'll pick the star in the sky that's significant. And this star happens to be, at the time, 100 light years away, or somewhat close at the time they chose that. If you look it up, it's about 123. I don't think it's changed that much since their independence, but their purpose was choosing a star that's about 100 light years away. That's a significant star. So Utah has Alpha Ursa Major as their state star. They also have a state star cluster, and if you've seen the flag and the emblem of the state, it has a beehive on it. So of course, M44 is their state star cluster. So they have a state star and a state star cluster.
So you're bringing up examples of things that were intelligently chosen, cleverly chosen.
And here, Delaware is keeping the same theme of chickens and silly minerals and weak fish and prickly holly trees and a dance of maples. So our state star is a 12th magnitude star. It's in the constellation of Ursa Major, and it has a name in the Tycho catalog. PYC, I got it right this time.
There we go.
3429-697-1.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Google that, and there is the Delaware Diamond. We are in Wikipedia And if you go to the state's website and they show all these state emblems and things that have been chosen, it seems to be.
I'm trying, earlier I found the, like, here it is. Like the actual legislate, the code.
Oh, yeah, there's yeah, there's some, get down to State Star.
Yeah, maybe it's miscellaneous.
Yeah, it is, it's down there.
Milk, there it is.
There it is. Yeah, so here what it says. The first star on the International Star Registry ever to be registered to an American state.
Boy,
That's another.
that's something to be proud of. For the first sucker state.
The state has one registered on the International Star Registry. So we're the first and the last.
Sheila, where were
And
you
the
during this whole
only.
thing to straighten this mess out?
I'm such an ass by then.
Yeah,
Was our
if only.
Somebody already take our first or something.
Polaris.
So, yeah, well,
Right.
so what I was gonna say, we could do a redo of history. What should be.
Al Capri. I'm not, Imperio. I do it all the
Imperial
time.
blue and gold.
I show them all the time.
Perfect. Perfect.
For public nights, I show them Alberio and I say,
There's your blue and gold.
I said, this is the University of Delaware Star, and you tell me why, and I'll look, and I say, what color? I say, most people see blue and gold.
That would be a
Alberio should
perfect.
Our state.
Hey, but that's got nothing on TYC 863.247.392-3.
So, I got to thinking, it ought to be something that, at least a bright star, they're 21 or 22 first magnitude stars. And it ought to be something that is seen almost all year round, at least. So it's
Tonight.
Stormed over.
Unfortunately, in the circumpolar region, there are no first magnitude stars, but there's others that are close.
You do Polaris.
And,
Revolve around us.
Yeah. But there are plenty of other options, and I think that's a perfect suggestion to make.
Yes.
So we ought to petition our
Knuckleheads.
legislators.
Provide your, prepare some slides for the.
So,
legislature.
at least we ought to be able to see this 12 magnitude star. So stellarium,
Get coons up here.
we checked this and it does come up in stellarium.
It's 12-year-old girl.
Ah,
And I think Delaware's about to appoint the state Nigerian prince that they're gonna be bailing out from some financial situation. You want to just search right for it, Greg?
Say that, yeah.
You want to just go right for it?
Yeah, go for the number again here. TYC,
Right
the
there.
Tycho
There you
catalog.
go.
Boom, beautiful. Look, there she is. Wait a minute, let me zoom in. Nope,
Oh, wow.
I know.
yeah.
Well, oh, wow.
Yeah, let me put on some.
Yeah, so it's up near the front feet. Under the,
There you go.
yeah.
I like how they said you can see it with binoculars and a telescope. There'd be some pretty doggone big.
Yeah, at least there was. Let's see, when was this?
Rob, you're.
Back in, 2017.
This week.
There was. The Delaware State News did try to clarify some of that, they gave a little bit of the.
Maybe we should hold out hope. What if it's just a really slowly moving planet? And it turns out we really lucked out.
Well,
Delaware State Planet.
Yeah. There she
the
is.
first and last time,
Yeah.
probably you're gonna see the Delaware State Star.
We're not even seeing it now.
here
'cause it's-
Tonight.
Yeah.
It's an
I've seen
interstellar
it.
vehicle using light sails.
That's it.
Takes a pretty big. So that gives you one up of magnitude star.
You've seen a 12 magnitude star and it's.
So take that every state except for Utah.
Turn on the deep sky objects and see if M81 and M82 are.
Our state star.
Do you know how?
To the right border is the little galaxy symbol.
Yeah, there.
Nope, nothing near it. Oh, there's something way up here. Tiger's
that?
Eye, which is still not terribly close.
81 and 82 are gonna be to the.
Are those over here, right?
That's a little further away. Middle of nowhere.
Nothing.
Hey, that's appropriate. We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, actually, when you zoom, it's in.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you, Greg.
We can help you.
All right. So you could be on even keel with Delaware if you just spend the $20 and buy yourself a star.
Yes, that's it.
Next up, Rick Spencer. Talking about what's lobbying. Yeah.
Newfound skills get us out of this star.
What can I do? Anyway, yeah, I wasn't sure whether to even.
You want to? Where do you want to sit?
I'll stand here.
Okay. Do you want me to
Turn the camera.
manipulate for you?
Oh, sure.
Advanced slides. Yeah. Sorry, you're not gonna.
Yeah, you need to share the presentation for the people.
Okay.
There he is.
There I am.
Chair.
He's
No.
pointing at
Click
that
the big
star,
green button.
Delaware's-
Like the presentation. Or the screen, that's fine.
Yeah, screen probably easier.
And I think you're already pinned.
Yep.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Anyway, so this is also not totally about astronomy. It didn't even bring in astronomy at the end, at least yours did, that record anyway. But I think we could all agree that science, well, can we all agree that science is important?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, good. And science funding is important,
Yes.
let's say, and workforce is important, and science teaching is important. I think most of us, all right thinking people would agree on that. So anyway, I'm a member of the American Physical Society, and every year we go to Congress and lobby for those three nice things I just mentioned. I thought it might be of some interest just to sort of show you what we did and how that works, and you know, that's pretty much it. So this is something that I find very cool. So go ahead and switch. So basically, this is stuff that we get on the APS website, and you know, we get this is like a drop in the bucket as far as all the emails and information that we get about this and everything else. But every year there's an annual advocacy event bringing, you know, again, government APS members. So we go to Capitol Hill and we go to various offices of various congressmen and Congress people to sort of advocate for these things, which I just mentioned. They all have study sheets, which I'll show you, and just a little procedure that we do in January. Go ahead, Jeff, if you don't mind. So there's every year we're given some priorities. When I say every year, I've only done this for a few years, and it wasn't too much fun to do virtually. It was okay, but this was a lot more fun to do it in person this year for the first time in a while. So there's five, I believe it's always five priorities of the powers that be at the American Physical Society, which includes a lot of astronomy, by the way, obviously, but just thought I'd toss that in. That the powers that be at the APS decide are the things that we're going to push for this year. And the five things this year were funding fundamental research, which is the CHIPS bill. And I took a picture of that because that stands for the Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors and Science Act. Creating helpful incentives to produce semiconductors and science. Okay, you all got that on the way now. So that's what's called CHIPS Act, which is science funding in general, but also semiconductors. And then information for the congressmen about sort of Congress people, STEM teachers, international STEM students, methane and inclusion. I'm going to go through all these one by one, but not in depth. Don't worry. If you don't mind, Jeff. Okay, so we show up in the evening before, we get fed, and we are subject to introductory remarks. We go through the one pagers that I'm going to show you, then we get little tips on how to meet with people, which has to do with like listening to them as well as speaking and trying to understand their priorities as well as our priorities, basic stuff, but never a bad idea to keep in mind. And there's sort of a mock congressional visit and questions, and then we break out into groups and, talk about things anyway. So that's sort of what we do to get ready. Next, please. Thanks. And we're given the roster of people that we're going to be speaking to. In my case, I was on the Virginia, Maryland team because I live in Maryland, and they try to put the physicists, on the team of the state that they're going to be visiting. They try to match people with where they are. Basically, we're constituents. So supposedly it matters more that I'm from Maryland when I speak to a Maryland congressman than if, or congressman or senator, than if I were from some other state. I don't know why, but somehow that's supposed to matter. So in our case, it was a kind of easy slate because we had 5 Democrats and only 1 Republican, and those are viewed rightly or wrongly as sort of tougher cases as far as science funding and science teaching and immigration and whatnot. So these are the 5 issues that we're talking about listed in columns. Then we have the voting record, if there was a voting record for that particular senator or congressman, and and some of these are actually co-sponsored, so we kind of know that they're on board with this one at least. But we don't talk about all 5 with each senator or congressman. We sort of prioritize and don't touch some of them, for example. Well, I'll show you how that works. Anyway, these are the 5 that we talked about. Excuse me, the 4 senators and 2 congressmen that we spoke. Jeff, thanks. I thought it was kind of cool. I haven't really, this for me is kind of interesting because I'm used to looking at these kinds of, rosters and like, okay, going to the dentist, Dr. Smith, dentist, and maybe the chiropractor or lawyer, heaven forbid. But these are household names, and it's kind of cool to see that. There's the great Marco Rubio, there's Ben Cardin, there's a lot of household names are here, and it's just kind of fun to see it like there, right on a regular old. I thought this is
not a TV, not a display. It's the old plastic stick-in letters. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true too. Yeah, and the various committees. These are big deals. I mean, these are like important people and important. They're just kind of wandering around there. Oh, they're there on the wall like anyone else. So
The Senate restaurant, that's extremely important.
yeah, it's important. Yeah. Right. Well, there's a few. Yeah, we actually ate in the. This is really fascinating to you, I'm sure. I believe it was the something coffee shop. Yeah, it was really exciting. I can switch that my phone anyway. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly, and I don't pretend to like remember all these things or memorize them. So again, we're not like deeply. We're just practicing physicists. Basically. I mean, they're different people with different backgrounds, but I would say most of us just have a job that requires being a physicist, and that's what we do. So we're not specifically knowledgeable about these bills. It isn't like my life to lobby Congress or think about legislation. I mean, this is like nothing I do 364 days of the year. But so we're educated a little bit about these. We're viewed as having some credibility, for obvious reasons. And so we are given, and then we give the senators and congressmen these 1-pagers, which are super important, and apparently that's how you communicate with people who are busy giving like 1 page. So this is the so-called CHIPS bill, which I don't remember what it means. I read it before, but I forgot it already. And this has to do with funding. So we sort of go and we talk about the status of the bill right now. It's introduced, maybe it's authorized but not allocated, which means there's like a bucket put up, but no money put in the bucket yet. So we kind of explain our case, why this is important. We're told to use personal anecdotes, which I'll mention a little bit later, just sort of kind of personalize it. We sort of provide this information. More than 85% of the long-term growth of the economy is attributed to advances in science and technology. Note, none of the senators, or we meet usually with aides, not the actual principals, but no one asks, oh, can you document that? Or what's the reference for that? Or can you back it up with data? Nobody asks that. You just say 85%. I think it would be better if it were like 86% or 82%, but anyway.
103%.
Yeah, something like that.
Politicians, after all.
But there are some very interesting facts here, like roughly 50% of new PhDs in physics take jobs in the private sector. I mean, this is important because there's certainly a mindset that, well, you're just going off and being another professor, who cares, like fund it yourself, you know. But in fact, I mean, I think we are all familiar with this, but not all congressional people are up to speed. You know, physics, for example, that's our thing. Of course, it's true for engineering and other fields as well. But, you know, they enter the private sector and support the economy. So this is not just academic, you know, egghead stuff that, you know, you can make fun of. And then, you know, we talk about the various institutions of higher learning that need more support, good students, not enough money, and so forth. So then the ask, so they use the word ask. I don't like that as a, yeah, the request. Yeah, you don't like it. Yeah, but I just hear that word over and over and over, ask, whatever. But anyway, the request is to fully fund the CHIPS and Science Act. So there's, as I said, there's an authorization, which means we're setting up a bucket that you could put money into if you so desire. The appropriation is actually the act of putting the money into the bucket. So that's it. So that's for the CHIPS Act. This is like overall funding of science. And then now one thing that is maybe one notch less well known to the various congressional aides is the, you know, what STEM teachers are. And there are a lot of personal anecdotes among us, you know, those of us on these teams that really play into this. I mean, I remember my poor, very nice 11th grade chemistry teacher. Well, this is ancient history. It's true now too. You have gym teachers teaching physics. You have, I mean, that's not you, Rob. But you have all kinds of people. You know, somebody leaves for, you know, they take another job and it's filled in by the history teacher or the gym teacher. I think it's fine if you're teaching. I mean, personally, I think it's okay. You can get away with that if you're teaching history. So you can read a history book and teach it to 7th graders. You can even do it more with math, I think, than with physics. Math is much easier at that level than physics is, because with physics, you can ask questions that you really have to be knowledgeable to answer, like, you know, how do rainbows work? And that's not trivial. So anyway, there's you know, there are programs for STEM teachers, but they're very underfunded and don't, for example, there's this noise program, but we really want that to be funded so that individuals who decide to go into STEM teaching don't have huge educational debt. Okay, so, you know, some people think that's a good idea, some people think it's not, but we think it is. This is an interesting statistic, then I'll move on. This is a subject, it's hard to read this, but physics, biology, chemistry, and then the percent with a college major and or certification, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means in the subject area. So physics, 37%, biology, 60-something%, chemistry, 34%. I think that is borne out by many of our experiences with our kids, for example. I mean, our own experience is too ancient, but, you know, we see it in our kids, like learning physics from, you know, the history teacher. Next. This is one that's also very, this is a shame because this is keeping international STEM students. So one thing that I don't know, many of you may be aware of, some more than others, there's a huge problem in the STEM workforce. Oh, really? That's surprising, Rick. I didn't know that. The fact is that you look around my lab, or you look around many of my colleagues' labs, and I've been to a lot of labs, you don't see a lot of John and Jane Does. You see very many foreign-born nationals, and they want to come and they want to work hard. And some of them are brilliant, and they all want to do this, and they all want to stay here and make some money and have a contribution, whether it's in academia or industry. The immigration system is completely, what's the right word, biased against them. So they enter the green card law like everyone else. Well, I mean, are they better than anyone else? Should they really be given preference? Well, I don't know. I'm enough of a, I don't know what the meritocracy, is that a word? I mean, I believe enough in, you know, some targeted immigration. We're not talking about physicists accumulating in buses at the border trying to get in behind the wall. These are people that are here doing things Americans don't want to do, and they face the same hurdles as, you know, the massive immigration. So we discuss this at all meetings, you know, with the congressional people and the aides and senators, and it's always kind of the same thing. Oh, that's really kind of immigration, and we say, yeah, well, it is immigration, but it's a separate part of immigration. And of course, we're not just trying to convince them. There's specific bills that relate to all these things. Just want to keep emphasizing. I'm not just in there to sort of shoot the
Waxing.
breeze and, talk about it and say, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there are actually specific congressional acts that they can do to further these goals. And so this, for example, is the Keep STEM Talent Act. So the points here, authorizing international students to express dual intent. What the heck does that mean? That means that right now, if you're a foreign national coming to get a PhD in physics or engineering or you name it, you're asked as part of your entrance what you plan to do when you're done. The right answer is, oh, go back home, of course. The wrong answer is, oh, I want to stay here and contribute to the US economy or academia. The problem is, it's not that the people don't want to maybe tell a little white lie and then say, oh, I want to go home and then stay. The problem is that's then used against them. Oh, but you documented that you want to go back home. And this isn't just a verbal thing, it's written. So that's a huge double bind. And do we really want to spend literally tens or $100,000 on training one student? Because it's expensive to train a student and then say, great, beautiful PhD in physics, awesome, sayonara. It's absolutely crazy. And the other number two is, again, this green card thing where there's a green card cap, there's a lottery, it's very hard to get a green card. Seriously, you come here, you get a PhD in a STEM subject, you're going to contribute to the economy, put them in a different pool. So anyway, and I think this is, again, these are specific requests for actual pending legislation. It's not just, everybody agrees. Next one. This is, so the top three are the ones I just mentioned. That was overall funding, STEM teaching, making STEM teaching not a losing proposition for someone who wants to do it, and then keeping graduate students and not sending them home. The next two are, to me, are really 1 or 2 or 12 notches down. So this is monitoring methane emissions. This is basically a climate change initiative, and it has to do with monitoring methane. Not really even reducing methane, but kind of knowing where the problem is. Methane is the most, as you well know, is sort of the single most potent greenhouse gas. It's kind of outnumbered by carbon dioxide, but it's a very important climate change source. So before you do something about a problem, you kind of have to measure it in a way. And there's a lot of fear in measuring this. I don't want to measure this because you're going to tell me to get rid of my cows. So this is what we are, basically advocating for, is at least measure the stuff. That doesn't mean and you have to emphasize that you're not anti-industry, you're not anti-agriculture, you're not anti-anything. We're just trying to solve problems together. Of course, that's a very controversial statement, that we're just trying to work together. No. Anyhow, so, and there's again, bills for this that we're, specifically asking for support on.
So how does the aides take your presentations?
Oh, quite. I mean, it's quite good. And they're actually quite, I would say, thorough and intelligent. There's a variation, of course, in any group, but they're pretty thoughtful. And these are the specific aids for. So a senator will have a bunch of different aids for specific topics,
right?
And we will be associated with the particular aide who's quite knowledgeable about science policy, say, and I think that it's not a terrible system. I mean, these aren't just, they don't just keep you in the ante meeting with the administrator. These are real people that have real influence and basically distill things and bring it to the boss, if you will.
So APS had these appointments set up for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all set up. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the one organizing this. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of different physicists, and where do they all go, and what senators and congressmen are available, and how do you sort of, it's like any massive scheduling problem. It's beyond anything I've scheduled. So anyway, it's quite interesting. This is a typical picture. This is our team. You wouldn't recognize it, but that's me. This is one of the congressional aides for Tim Kaine. And I think it's interesting. This woman is a lobbyist, a physicist who's a lobbyist. This guy is head of nuclear physics at NIST. I mean, very big guy. And people are with some throwaway behind them. Go ahead, John. And then I'm just showing this like this picture because there's the Capitol. Yeah, so now it's a little bit terrifying the case. Anyway, I like that picture. That's my last picture. So that's what we did.
Yeah. Cool. So you do it again?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I would do it virtually. It's just not that much fun.
Try to influence these people, or just provide them with information, or?
Well, you try to influence each one of the, for each of these 5 issues. And again, we don't necessarily talk about all 5. we always talked about the top three. The aides may not know exactly the status of the various bills. So the APS identifies a certain issue that can actually be acted upon. There's an action item with each of these. It's not just gaining their hearts and minds. It's really, action items just to provide an allocation suitable for the authorization. In other words, the money to sort of fill the authorization, or a certain bill to either sponsor if there is no bill, or to sign on to if there already is a bill that will be coming up for a vote. There's a specific action that's being requested. I just want to emphasize a lot of these personal stories really come up a lot, and that's one thing that I guess is true in any field. So, for example, I always talk about one of my postdocs who, we were doing this important, of course, quote unquote, important work in Alzheimer's disease, who knows, but anyway, he's a mathematician, and green card disaster, so he's out of there. Do we really want to lose this guy? He's Chinese, who cares? And this happens all the time. So, all of us have stories like that.
Cool. Thanks, Rick.
It sounds like the way you're supposed to influence the government, not with the buckets full of cash.
So next up is me. And I'll preface by saying we've all seen a lot of the really amazing astrophotography work that Bill and Rob and other members of the AP SIG have done. I'm here to share with you the other end of the spectrum of some pretty crappy images that you can get, but pretty easy, pretty fun, and kind of a neat way to get started. And this was actually, let me see, I forget what my first slide is already. So yeah, so this is about capturing star trails with a simple cell phone. And this little talk was actually inspired by former DAS member Nico Carver, who, a quick little update, and I cannot emphasize the credit to Nico. All of this information is pretty much picked from let me take a step backwards. For those of you that remember Nico, he left the DAS and the area about 4 years ago, give or take, to take what was his dream job, which was to work at the library at Harvard University's astronomy library. So he is a librarian by trade, involved in media and stuff like that, had an interest in astronomy, and boy, this job came up. So he bops up to Boston, and all of a sudden start catching wind that he's putting out these little YouTube videos. Oh, like with a lot of people, oh, that's cute. Okay. Then all of a sudden notice he's got 100,000 subscribers. Now 150,000 subscribers. The last thing I noticed when I'm chatting with Nico, he's now quit his job at the library to dedicate himself full-time to his YouTube work. Oh, wow. And I'd like to think the DAS is solely responsible for propelling him. So a little pitch to Nico and his YouTube channel, Nebula Photos, and actually a little preview. Nico is actually going to be our speaker for the June meeting. He's actually going to be coming into town and will be joining us in person. I hope to talk a little bit about astrophotography, but also maybe a little bit on his path to fame. And hopefully we won't be all too starstruck and all this kind of stuff. So anyhow.
Allowed to ask for autographs?
Oh, we're going to bring him in like the Pope in like one of those, plexiglass boxes. No, I'm saying, so Nico actually has moved to like the kind of outskirts of New Hampshire, if I'm not mistaken, to get under darker skies. So really cool, very awesome for Nico. I was chatting with him and he said it was really tough to leave the dream job, but keeping up with that and a exploding and ever more popular YouTube channel was just becoming too much for him. So this little talk that I'm going to be giving about star trails with a cell phone camera are really inspired by two videos that he put together. The first one about doing this with a iPhone, and the second one about doing it on an Android. So I'd say if anyone is inspired by my talk, don't follow what I'm saying. Go watch Nico's videos. You can see they're not too long, but this will just give a quick little snapshot of a quick summary of the information and my sort of crappy attempt at doing it, but fun. So anyhow, here we go.
Presentation is also going to be on YouTube.
Yes, exactly. So maybe I'll become a YouTube. So some apps that you need, and I'm kind of listing both the Android side and the iOS side. First, you need to capture a bunch of images, just like some of the actually good photos that the astrophotographers put together. It's usually a series of images that you take and mush together. So there's an Android app called I can never say this word, Intervalometer. It's the whopping $2. iOS has this nightcap camera, which is $3. Then the next step is you have to so you capture a whole bunch of images, then you got to mush them all together. So on the Android side, there's Star Trails, which is another whopping $2. For Apple, there's Star Stacker, $4. We're not talking huge money. And then in the end, you can do some post-processing, which is, you know, kind of tweaking, call it the photoshopping, enhancing the colors, the contrast, all that stuff. And Snapseed is a free program that's available for both. By no means am I suggesting that these are the only programs that can do this. These are just the ones that I didn't research. These are the ones that Nico came up with. So basically, with your Android phone and $4, you're off and running. With an Apple device and looks like $7, you're off and running. So the way this works, first establish north. Most star trail photos. Oh God! See, I told you it's going to be crappy. Oh boy! Just imagine the photo of my phone sitting in a tripod. What I meant to show is what I bought was one of those. Not even this. I bought one of those $10. I call them kind of squiggly leg short tripods.
But Chuck,
Yeah.
the holder that you use for the phone, put on the tripod is pretty important.
Yes.
So which one did you mess with? I mean, Chalabi makes one, and
Oh, this was some cheap $10 thing I bought off Amazon.
to hold
To hold the phone.
the phone onto the tripod.
Yeah, it's just like this stupid clamp thing, like
Yeah.
spring loaded. Not much different than like the thing you like to put your phone on in your car.
Yeah, on your bike.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if I had actually followed through with the note that I had left myself. But anyhow, establish north. A lot of the Star Trail photos face north just because it makes pretty circles that way. I'd say there's really no reason you couldn't try a different direction. I just haven't seen too many people do that. And the obedient little soldier that I am, for my crappy photo, pointed north. And one of the things that a lot of things people will talk about with Star Trails photos is, like, you've seen Star Trails 1, you've seen it a million times, but the real trick is your foreground. And there's just a couple of examples, a few that I just stole off of some random Google searching that I thought was kind of neat. That was really neat with the kind of spooky tree perfectly. It looks like that might be closer to the equator, if I dare judge that Polaris looks a little lower in the sky, or some trails over, I assume, San Francisco. But then a little closer to home, recently, our very own Ryan Gilbert put together a really cool image. I forget what he titled it, but it was something where he was drawing the parallel between the swirls in the sky and the swirls in these hay bales. So I'm sure if Ryan was with us, he'd be very embarrassed that I was showing off his work, which is far better than what I ended up coming up with. So again, the real key to make it interesting Star Trail photos is think about your foreground, because again, the background is always just gonna kind of look like that. So just a real quick, I even hesitate to call this the tutorial. So before you get into any of the fancy apps, the first thing is you have to familiarize yourself a little bit with taking a long exposure photo with your cell phone. And by long exposure, in this case, I'm talking 3, 4, 5 seconds, something like that. In my program and a lot of the cameras, you need to switch to what's called Pro mode. And in Pro mode, it allows you to do individual control over your shutter and ISO. One of the reasons my photo turned out really crappy, it was urged, and I think this is a general good suggestion for photography, is to set your ISO high. I forgot to do that, which is part of the reason why my image did not turn out that great. So do as I say, not as I do. But the key is find a way to get into pro mode in your native phone's camera app to see that you, because the key is you want to be able to set your shutter speed somewhere roughly in the 4-second range, and the ISO. That's something you're gonna have to play with it the night of to figure out what the right combination is.
So Jeff, Pro Mode is something that is on the native app, not?
Yes, it was on my phone, and it should be on most phones.
What type of phone do you have?
Android, Galaxy. And again, if you watch Nico's videos, he talks about, like in the Apple one especially, he talks about how he gets into Pro Mode on the Apple. Yeah, but yeah, you might have to even Google search your specific phone model. Again, this is the information for my specific phone, which is a Galaxy, I don't know, whatever they had 8 years ago. But yeah, basically for me, I just hit this little more and it brought up all these different options, one of which was Pro Mode. Okay. Yeah, so the key is, you want to get your shutter and ISO set appropriately, whatever that means. And then you use, again, I'm highlighting this intervalometer app, which is actually something that runs over top of your phone's native camera app. And basically it's this, you can notice back here is my phone's camera app pointing at, like, I think the corner of my desk or something like that when I did this. And the intervalometer app just kind of sits on top of it and effectively just hits your shutter repeatedly. Some basic settings that Nico urged: the number of images, he suggested to leave it as parentheses 1, which effectively means keep taking images until I say stop. Or if you wanted to, for whatever reason, you could say take 50 images or 300. I think it made sense what he suggested, which is if you put this parentheses 1, it'll just keep taking them until you tell it to stop. Same thing with the interval. The one little trick, this button here, when you push it, the intervalometer app attempts to find where the take a picture button on your phone is, which in my case is like here. And so if you push it and it's confused, you can tell it, this is where you got to push to take the picture. And that's really the only thing you need to do in the intervalometer app, is to basically make sure that the app knows where the take the picture button within your native camera app is. And then when you're ready to go, you just hit this start and it'll take a picture. Like if you have your shutter set for 4 seconds, it'll take a picture every 4, I don't know, maybe 4.5 or 5 seconds, whatever it ends up being. And it'll just keep doing that forever and ever and ever until you either run out of battery, run out of storage, or hit the stop button.
So your phone is on the tripod at this time.
Yeah.
And it's aimed upwards at the sky.
Yep.
You've got to get it up where you can get under it and see the screen.
Which I did not do the best job of. So you'll see it in a couple of images. When I tested this out for the first time, because I thought it was a curious thing, it happened to be a group of us were up at Cheslin a month and a half ago, I'd say. And I had just seen Nico's videos and I said, you know what, I'm going to be up there for 2 hours or so. I'm not going to be staring at my phone because that's not good to do when you're trying to astronomate or whatever the word is. So I said, you know what, I'll just set my, actually, so I had that little shorty, I mean, it's like barely this tall tripod on the hood of Bill McKibben's car and just kind of set it up there, roughly pointed it and hit the button and basically ignored my phone for the next 2 hours. And that's what I think is kind of cool about this, is just set the phone, let it do its thing while you're looking through your telescope or chatting with your buddies or imaging or whatever else you're doing. It's kind of just like a side little bonus thing that you can do while everything else is going on.
How much battery power does that end up?
Yeah, so that is a good question. I don't know if I needed to, but it was kind of cold that night.
Yeah, okay.
So I actually hooked an external battery, like one of those kind of battery bricks to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it kept the phone totally topped off after 2 hours. And I have no clue how much of the battery brick it consumed. But in 20-ish degree weather, it was pretty cold that night. It was no problem to go for about 2 hours. So, yeah. Again, mileage is going to vary a little bit, but the battery brick might not be a bad idea, especially if it's cold. Yeah,
If you go in airplane mode and turn the phone screen brightness down.
yeah, that'll help too.
That will help.
Because yeah, effectively your screen is going to be on the entire time, and that is a big drain. I did not do that, but again, the brick was able to keep up.
I use that even just for Sky Safari on my iPad.
Yeah.
On a cold night.
Yeah. Yep.
And Bill was wondering what those scratches on the hood of his car.
Yeah, right. We'll get to that. So that's
slowly sliding down the hood.
So that's roughly vaguely how the intervalometer app works. Again, if you really want to know, watch Nico's video. So then you combine the images with this Star Trails app. And again, it's pretty basic. He suggested, oh, you know what? Star Trails, I think if the whopping $2 is too much for you, I think you can get a free version that only lets you pick the higher quality PNG if you watch a advertisement video first. I'm like, I'll pay $2, whatever. But there's really nothing to do here. I think the default is JPEG. Nico told me to change it to PNG. I guess that's a better format. And then it basically will bring up your, whatever you call it, gallery, and you pick, in my case, I think it ended up with like 800 images because they were only 4 seconds and I went for about 2 hours. Someone who's quick with arithmetic could probably tell me that I was right. I think it was about 800 images. And depending on how your phone works, you're not like clicking them one by one. You can kind of do some swipes and swoops and things to hopefully make that better. And then it just, a little bar, the 800 images. It's funny. I think like I did it as we were driving home from Cheslin. I mean, I think it took 5 or 10 minutes to mush all the files together.
How much storage was it?
I don't know, not too much. I mean,
Probably not.
yeah, I mean, 800 images sounds like a lot, but when you picture these kids that are capturing every 7 seconds of their life, it's not that much different.
Is it capturing video or?
No, still images.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, so they're, I don't know, 5 megs each times 800, not a whole bunch. And then I ended up, that's not the, hold on a second. Oh yeah, sorry, that is right. It just looks better. So that's the result. I got some Star Trails, again, kind of crappy, also kind of fun, because I started studying and I'm like, okay, what the hell was going on here? Well, that was in the direction that my phone was facing when I started the night. There was no one over there, but two unnamed members who arrived a little bit later happened to park over in that area. I would argue that they didn't ruin the photo. They probably actually took a crappy photo and made it interesting. If you study hard enough, there's like a hubcap, and one of these days I'll figure out whose hubcap it is, and then I'll know who did it. But you can see some Star Trails. You see some pretty cool flight paths and all kinds of other stuff. So that's why I kind of started off saying, again, this was my first attempt. I wanted to be absolutely transparent that this is very easy. It's, not an amazing result, but it's a fun result. And it was a result that utilized my phone, which would have been just sitting in my pocket, not being used for this whole time anyhow. And perhaps if I had set the ISO right and done a few other things, it could have turned out a little better. And maybe there'll be a little update later on where I actually do a better job.
If you have an old System 3, what they call it, the one that just obsoleted, the phone system that went out.
Oh, okay.
3G. If you have a 3G phone, they have excellent cameras.
Yeah.
Download the pictures. You don't need to have a cell phone connection.
No, that's a great idea. Good point.
Probably have a dead 3G phone or.
Right.
Sitting around.
Yeah, when you have you get the iPhone 73, and so you got the iPhone 72 and the 71 and the 7, you can set them all up and go to town.
But Jeff, what is it doing when it's stacking?
The math behind it?
No, not the math. I just mean, is it, I guess there's no motion, the stars are moving, but there's no pointing issue. So I guess by stacking, it really just means
somehow mathematically combining all the images.
I'm not talking about math. It's just really sequential. It's really just.
It's not doing any
alignment. It's not doing any alignment. It's just sequentially. It's just stacking on top of each other. basically. It's not- Yeah, so you get a sequential.
Yeah.
That way you get it fair.
Right, no, of course, and so I guess the thought is that I guess you could, I mean, I see no reason why you couldn't use this to. Image a star cluster with a whole bunch of short exposures. I don't know if it can,
With your phone?
but I guess it doesn't do any stacking though. So.
Well, plus, I don't know, your phone is gonna,
Well-
People do it.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
But it wouldn't align, it just stacks, so you'd have a mess, you'd have to.
Probably.
So that's-
Because again, the program, let me see the app that I use to add them all up is called Star Trail, so I don't know if it has anything specific.
Oh, no, I know that, for using for.
You could.
Yeah,
People do.
You would have to then align though, not just stack.
Yes,
and understand, there's all combinations of,
of course.
the big thing I want to emphasize is you could probably do a lot of stuff if you took all those images and pulled them onto like a desktop or a laptop computer.
Just wondering if there's a smartphone app. that-
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I have to ask Nico and Judy.
Other groups that are just
Yeah.
cell phone astronomy.
Yeah.
These guys.
But I mean, the cool and cute and quaint thing that I wanted to emphasize about this is like, by the time Bill and I got back into Newark, I'm like, boom, it's done. And no transferring and all that stuff. Again, I would put this in the cute and quaint category. So a little bit more fiddling. This Snapseed app, again, I don't know that much about it. I just fiddled with it a little bit. And just kind of tried to see if I could get a little more detail. First of all, I was like, there's not a whole lot of star trails here. Maybe you could, I see these wizards where it's like they click some buttons and then all this extra stuff comes out. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I tried that and I got a little more detail. The other thing which was interesting is I was trying to figure out like, oh, it's the shadow of these trails. Like what? What I best could figure out is at some point in this 2 hours, the phone actually might have shifted, which is not too surprising considering it was on a $10 tripod on the hood of Bill's car that we were getting things in and out of over the course of the 2 hours. Again, really just trying to overemphasize how crappy this is, but also fun and all this other kind of stuff.
So it's a long scratch down the hood.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like now you actually do see a lot more star trails. I mean, you could definitely see there's something weird going on with Polaris. So something happened. But that's okay. It's what else would my phone have been doing for those 2 hours? So
a very wise man told me many years ago that there are indeed some people who do things right the first time, but they're not very interesting.
exactly. So yeah, just wanted to use that as maybe an inspiration that if you're out doing an observing session or something and you're not using your cell phone for other reasons, or like Bill said, you got your, the iPhone 63 instead of when you bought your iPhone 65, put it to good use. Because as a lot of the photographers will say, it's truly, I remember back when cell phone cameras came out, I've done DoD work for most of my life. So I was, been going on military bases a whole lot. And I remember back in the early days of the little flip phones, if you had no camera on the cell phone, you could bring your camera onto base. If you had a camera, you could not. And I remember at that time, the cameras on those phones were so god awful that I had to try for like the handful of phones that I purchased to try really hard to find the model that did not have a camera, because the camera was so god awful, it was useless, and it made it a pain to get into these military bases. Fast forward to now, and it is actually pretty remarkable, the camera that they're packing on these things. So anyhow, again, wanted to give a final pitch to Nico and his pretty cool website, Nebula Photos. He obviously is not just talking about stupid star trails with your cell phone. He's talking about all kinds of interesting astrophotography topics. That little gizmo will actually take you, I think, right to that YouTube video. But again, have fun with it. I'll probably try it a couple more times and maybe come up with something that's not so awful.
He did a really good one on comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys saw it? Yeah, it was really good. So if you didn't see it and you have several hundred exposures sitting on your computer,
Yeah.
you might go back and do what he says, and
Cool.
Because he came out with a really good exposure.
Yeah,
His picture was really good.
yeah. Nico's doing some cool work. So
Before
yeah,
he moved up there, he had a 2-page spread photo in Sky and Telescope.
yeah,
Of a multiple image combination.
Mosaic.
Wide field, in Cygnus.
and I'm still trying to find a good wall or location where we could get a 5 foot by 5 foot printed version, because it's 87 megapixels effective. I mean, it's you can just zoom in forever and see more and more detail.
So
How do you
it before it
replace-
comes over. This is a generic, how do you replace a job? With a YouTube channel? I mean, how do you?
You mean financially?
Yeah, so you make money
So
with
he's
it.
got sponsors, but he also uses Patreon. And at the end of every one of his videos, you see what to me just seems like this endless stream of names of people that are giving him, I guess, a couple of bucks every month. And when you've got
YouTube gives him money.
and YouTube giving him some money, maybe he'll talk. I hope he'll talk about some of this in June.
So what is the long list of names? So you throw in a couple bucks so that your name appears there or something?
Or just because you like what the guy's doing and want to support it.
The other thing that happens, if you get enough subscribers, YouTube will contact you, say, if we put ads on your videos, and anytime anybody sees it, we'll give you money. So most people that do these things, when they get over 100,000 subscribers, they start putting these ads on there. And every time they get $1 or $5 or whatever, every time somebody looks at it, and that's where the main percentage is.
I mean, obviously, I'm sure we're not going to pry into the inner depths of Nico's personal finances, but I hope he addresses some of that when he comes to June. Because I'm kind of curious too, because, of course, I think YouTube and TikTok and all these stars were like the modern day rock stars that every kid now wants to be a TikTok star. They don't want to be a rock and roll star anymore. And it's just as unlikely, I think, other than Nico at least seems to be keeping his living going by doing it. So, yeah. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Jeff,
Rob?
Some on YouTube and he gets checked.
Oh, you see me okay here?
It's not a lot of money. He doesn't have a lot.
There you go.
But he gets enough people where he gets,
All right, guys.
$20 there.
So I'm here to talk about DS cooperation with Mount Cuba and University of Delaware in research projects. And this is stuff that you can get involved with. What I'm going to talk about here is some projects that DAS members were involved with just recently. If you'll remember, a couple meetings ago, we talked about how you can get involved, and I'll mention a little bit of that in here as well. So first of all, note that there are two different things that you can do at Mount Cuba. You can be an education associate, or you can be a technical associate. The education associates do programs for the public. They might do public nights as a host or a co-host. Those are every other Monday. You do a presentation to the people that come. You'll do a talk about some topic. They'll take them outside, show them telescopic views, or take them down to the planetarium and show them stuff there. We also have the family nights, which are more for children, and they're usually on Friday nights. And they usually involve a planetarium show and maybe some observations. You can also volunteer to help out with school groups and groups in the general public and scout groups and all sorts of other folks. So we do have a number of educational associates at Mount Cuba, and you can join that group. We're always looking for more people to do that. The technical associates is a different group, and those folks are people that do research projects using Mount Cuba resources. So you can actually propose a project, do a little write-up about what you'd like to research, and get some observing time on the telescopes. You can help out with University of Delaware projects like wet runs, like whole Earth telescope observing programs. You can participate in projects that are currently ongoing. You talk to Dr. Judy about that. So there's a number of ways you can get involved. And please note, if you're an educational or technical associate, you will have access to the building as well.
So the planetarium is being used.
Oh, certainly. Planetarium is used very frequently during the programs that we do for the public, programs that we do on public nights, family nights. It's used quite a bit.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the wet program, is the new telescope gonna be part of that? Is that wet program still active?
So they have a wet run every couple of years. I don't know the current status of that, but I would assume that they would be using that bigger scope once it's complete. Yeah,
Wet run?
that's a whole Earth telescope. It's a program
Okay.
where they can track time with numerous telescopes all around the world, and all those different telescopes are observing the same target, so that if there's bad conditions, or of course, if the sun comes up at your location, you'll have a continuous data stream of the particular thing.
You
you're
can
observing.
join the research project, you can join it to help out.
Yeah, I did it a number of times several years ago when they were. Mhm, certainly,
There's a map with pins
yes,
with all the locations of all the telescopes.
yes, there is a map on the wall right out there, and you can see all the different things that participate in that. Any other questions about that? Yeah. Note that we just had a really big meeting of education associates, and the rest of this presentation is going to focus on that. So we had a big meeting, I think it was in December, where we planned out the whole schedule for next year. We had very nice refreshments that were offered at the meeting by Kim. She's a great cook, and we had a great time with that. And we also made some plans for doing training programs, because a number of the newer education associates might not know how to use some of the gear, some of the equipment. And I signed up for a few of those training programs as well, because I don't know everything either. So we all signed up for things we were interested in learning more about. And I joined a couple of those programs. I took the one on the 4-inch telescope. And this presentation, the rest of it is going to focus on the 24-inch telescope training program. So several of us signed up for the 24-inch telescope training program so that we could help with research and do observations on the big 24-inch upstairs. I'm one of them, Jeff's one of them, Jim Kirshen is one of them. I'm not remembering anybody else, but we have several DS members who are participating in that. Continue. Here was our first big session that we were doing. We observed the Flaming Star Nebula. Here was our resulting picture. You can see the intertwined nebulosity of hydrogen emission and reflection nebulas in the Flaming Star Nebula. I took this image that we took, plate solved it, and then overlaid it on a digital sky survey image so that you could see approximately where in the Flaming Star Nebula we were imaging. And again, we did this in December. The Tadpoles Nebula region is in Auriga, and we did this on another evening in January. And so with the Tadpoles region, we were imaging, as you can see, these little tadpole-looking nebulous regions. That was our main target. And we took a couple different images in different areas to give different framings of our subject. And you can see the details of our images down there.
So can you go back to that?
Sure.
What I think I see is 30 seconds a piece.
Yeah.
So you see 30 seconds, well, 30 seconds per
image
per light frame.
Mhm.
And there aren't very many of them. So there's 7, 8, 9, so on, so 13. So that's 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you could do just as well or better with your gear, only it would take you a night or 2 nights.
Yeah, it would take for my telescope to take this, and I've taken this as well with my gear. I might do an hour. I mean, it's a pretty big scope up there, so less time is needed. in
Oh, I
order to
understand.
get it.
But I guess what I mean is this object, I don't know, this object, are these amazing images like OMG, we can never.
They're
get
pretty
this
good.
far?
For
Is it
me,
better doing it quickly or?
when I've taken images of this region, it's usually a much broader area because the framing of the telescope upstairs is much smaller.
Right.
So this is kind of like a zoomed in section of an image I would take with my scope. But yeah, they're pretty good images, I would say. I did the processing on these images. That's actually my processing in Pixit site that I did.
And the real aim of what resulted in these pictures was more training than,
Yeah.
make the best image ever.
Yeah.
So really, they're images that fell out of a training session.
Mhm.
Yep.
That just happened to be pretty decent, so.
Yep. This was another evening we were doing observations. It was on the 3rd. This was a very, very, very cold evening. For those of you that know, it was like 8 degrees outside.
Wow.
It was frigid. So inside the dome, they were imaging the comet as you can see here, this is Comet ZTF, it's kind of a close-in image. And here is my camera, my DSLR that I put on a tripod outside the dome. And actually that,
Bill's car.
no, not on the Bill's car. I had it on a tripod instead of, and actually it was a tracking tripod, so it was tracking the sky at the time. But it was 20-second images that I used to take that, and I stacked 229 of them. And you can see I did get the tails.
Yeah,
Right there.
nice.
This is really close in, so it's like this much of the comet, so you're not going to see any tails here. But it's definitely green, right? There's definitely green in both of them, and you definitely have the dust in both of them as well. So the green tail and the dust tails. And that's the images we took.
And you copyrighted it?
Yes, my image, of course. I can't copyright the things we did jointly, of course. Right, any questions? Cool. All right, that's
So really,
actually-
the key takeaway
Yep.
is, especially when the new big telescope comes online, the 24-inch is gonna be kind of freed up a little more. So if people have some ideas of what they might want to do with it, that could be possible.
So typically, for research, you usually don't just sort of sit and come up with some great idea. I mean, that's just, not the way it usually works. Usually, so is there a list, for example, of previous projects that people have done or things that would be suitable? I mean, we can all kind of just try to dream up something, but like I say, usually there's a context and there's capabilities or the things that people have tried. Then you can extend that rather than just sort of, oh, we're going to do this de novo.
I'd say ask Judy.
Yeah.
Because she has a number of projects that are ongoing, involving variable stars and photometry and stuff like that. So she could definitely set you up with something to observe and do.
I mean, there are things you can imagine, right? Like variable stars or power motions or transient events. You can kind of make a list and think about things, but
Yeah.
Usually you don't come up with a good project in a vacuum.
You can easily ask her and say, what do you need data on?
Yeah.
And then start taking data for her. And she would really appreciate that. Even if you don't want to do your own project, she would appreciate somebody doing it for her.
But Rob and I were doing this training, and I'd asked Rob to put this together because I've been trying to kind of re-foster what I heard has existed in, maybe even a few decades past, where DAS members would be more involved in Mount Cuba research than maybe has been happening over the past 10 years. So it'd be kind of nice to resurrect some of that. And I think we're making some big steps towards that here. So it's kind of cool.
Yep.
Last up, a talk partly inspired by Chris Horrocks, and a couple of us were chatting one day and we're like, you know what? We just launched the Artemis mission. We're going back to the moon and we haven't said one word about it. So anyhow, Chris Horrocks is going to close us out with a little chat about some current events.
Yep. And I'm gonna try to make it quick.
Yeah.
I don't have anything that's a slide.
Oh, just hit page down. Which is
Got it.
cool.
So. Speaking of the moon.
Yeah.
So Artemis 1 went up. And their objective was a launch, orbit, re-entry and recovery. All that was successful and they were very happy with it. Artemis 2 is not ready to go. Something's going on with the engine assemblies and they're trying to get them done. I don't know why they're late, but they're late. They also still haven't announced the crew, which will be 4 people. One of them will be Canadian, I guess. So the engine assemblies are still in Louisiana waiting to get installed and sent over to Cape Canaveral. Don't know when that's going to happen. Artemis 1 went well. So Peregrine, which was going to go do something I'm not sure of, has been told to shift what they're doing and drop off some gear for Artemis 3 to use. I didn't know that they were sending up things to stash gear for them, but that's apparently what they're doing. And that's our engines we're waiting on. That's Peregrine. I don't know if it's like a bird's nest of stuff they're going to stash somewhere for these guys. I don't know what they're sending up there. So,
My dryer lids.
so Arvin is waiting for someone to tell them they can launch. They're ready to go.
That's a tank with insulation.
Oh, okay. That was bad crap.
No.
Peregrine may not be the first one to get up there. Intuitive Machines Nova Sealander is trying to get off the ground immediately to drop off some stuff on the lunar South Pole. So they're going to drop off a bunch of stuff too. Also, on the way now is Hakuto R Mission 1, which is a Japanese thing, and they're sending a rover for the United Arab Emirates and a rover of their own, which they said is a sphere which converts to a cylinder with 2 wheels and some cameras. I can't picture what the hell that's. I don't know. On to Mars. Mars rover completed its first sample storage depot. So it's been taking samples and now it's putting them under a rock. Probably that rock goes. But that's the first time that they've accomplished filling that up. There's not a lot going on with Mars, but that was pretty exciting for them. Web, you see lots and lots of pictures. Every week I see pictures and I thought, I need to look at some to see what's going on with Web. In addition to the pretty pictures we see, they're doing some cool stuff. There was a group that just inventoried ices in the darkest regions of a cold molecular cloud. So
ISIS?
Ices, yeah.
Oh, not ISIS.
Yeah. They were able to identify for the first time, like they could take an inventory. They had a good guess as to what was going on, but now they could really get a good inventory of frozen molecules from carbonyl sulfide, ammonia, methane, methanol, and so on. And they were able to get a good idea of what is there in that. And this is the stuff, the ingredients available to make future generations of stars and planets before they're heated up. And they were saying that this comes all out of like a star will come out, just start with like just a 5-centimeter disc of these frozen things and some dust. It's crazy. Speaking of star formation, Webb's able to observe at specific wavelengths that Hubble was not. The MIRI does 7.7 and 11.3 micron, and the near infrared camera does 3.3 micron. They are looking at polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and that's important in the formation of stars and planets. Hubble just didn't have those wavelengths, and I guess I need to move on. Like that. So they're looking out in those spiral arms of that. And so they're really, it's not just the pretty pictures that we're getting every week on the internet. Webb did have a problem there. NIRISS instrument glitched out. It got hit with a cosmic gamma ray or something, and it was out for a while. They kind of up. Yeah. Webb got its first exoplanet. And then Google did a big presentation on their AI, and someone asked a question about Webb and exoplanets, and the AI got the answer wrong. And the stock went down $100 billion.
And they were about to do a live demonstration of their phone app and forgot to bring the phone on stage.
That was a bad day. But back to Hubble. I like Hubble.
Yes.
So Hubble's still doing stuff, and it is. We have that pointer.
Yeah.
So it's spoke season on Saturn, and that's like that right there. And so this all wasn't real clear to me, but because Saturn's tilted on its axis, has 4 seasons like we do, but each season, spring, summer, fall, winter, each one is 7 years long. So I guess every spring and fall, Yeah, the autumnal equinox, you'll start seeing these spokes, and I guess the spring equinox, you'll see these spokes. So I guess we can't see it as well with the spring, but we see it pretty good with the autumn. And we've not been aware of this for too many autumns, but they say it's just very similar to an aurora borealis. And I don't know if we can see that with any telescope we have or not. It'd be a good challenge. But certainly, we could probably get images of it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hubble also, for the first time, directly measured the mass of a single isolated white dwarf through gravitational lensing. Before, we used to have to use binary stars, and if their orbit was very slow, it wasn't super accurate. So Hubble's still doing stuff. Some guys, I think they were in Denmark, discovered a potential runaway supermassive black hole. So when two galaxies merge.
In Denmark?
Yes. When two galaxies merge, the black holes merge almost always, but in theory, maybe not. And they found evidence of this one getting kicked out, resulting in an incredibly massive, incredibly dense object moving at terrifying speeds through clouds of interstellar gas, pushing a bow wave like a boat ahead of it and trailing a long wake of ionized hydrogen, ripples of compressed gas, and bursts of newborn stars behind. So, I mean, Hubble's look at that. It's pretty awesome. And I guess it was, we had to talk on the Parker.
Yes.
So I've kind of paid attention to that before. And right now, Parker is out pretty far away from the, I couldn't get a good picture. Pretty far away from the sun, but it's coming around again for its 15th orbit. Perihelion is going to be on March 17th when it'll be close to it again. And Parker did some stuff with discovering the origin of the solar wind, these jetlets at the base of the sun's outer atmosphere. That was super complicated. I was not able to figure out all of what they were talking about. The other thing I saw in the news is when people get, I guess you apply for a project to get Webb time or Hubble time or what have you. And so just last week, they're talking about, like, if you get, I'm going to look at such and such, and you get all your data and you have a year to use that data to come up with your papers or what have you. And then everyone gets to look, and they're talking now about stripping that away, where all that data becomes immediately available to any scientist that wants to use it. You don't get any exclusive time. Hubble's exclusive time is 6 months now, and Webb's is a year. And they're talking about getting rid of that entirely. I guess if you're the guy that did all the work to get the project going, you're not going to be happy about that. But if you're some guy that didn't do all the work, yeah, we're happy. But they say, you know, the taxpayers paid for it. We want this time-sensitive data to be made best use of as quickly as possible. So I don't know, but they just ended their commentary period on that last week.
I'm not sure I understand. Wait, so you can no longer get Hubble time?
No.
No, you still propose the project. You want Hubble to look
Okay,
at something.
But did she share the data?
You don't get exclusivity on the data.
Right.
Like, geez, God.
She actually got Hubble time.
Yeah.
No, she got.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the last thing that I saw last week was some guy, or I'm on Reddit a lot. I don't know why, at least my time, but I am. Some guy on there is like, hey, I discovered a nebula. I don't know this nonsense, but he did. And he has a Takahashi FS 106, which is a 4-inch on a Paramount disc mount, but basically, I mean, it's just a guy, just like us, that discovered this nebula, and he used O3, and they say there's a gold rush in discovering stuff with O3 now, and that's stuff that maybe we have equipment that one of us could do. Probably not me, but one of us could do that. Go find
Let's see if I can do it with my cell phone.
We're in the same.
Yeah.
in the same page.
We need to borrow it a little bit.
Write that into the grant. Yeah. Good time.
Yeah, so some guy on Reddit can do that. I guess a lot of people could. It's that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And it was a cool nebula too. I can probably find a picture, but
Yeah, throw it up on the groups.io.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
We could grab it for Delaware.
I mean, I
Yeah,
really,
Delaware State Nebula.
I mean, I really thought it was nonsense, and then somebody sent it over to Astrobeam, and then they're like, "Oh, this all looks real." So, and it confirmed. So, I thought that was super cool. So that's the stuff been going on the last month, and I think we'll try to keep up with all this a little more than we have been.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Thanks, sir. All right, well, thanks again to everyone who shared something tonight. Just to wrap things up, again, a couple of reminders. We are resurrecting our dinner meeting. So save the date for the third Tuesday in May. Details should be in the March focus and the website very soon in terms of the speaker and the menu and registration links and all that good stuff. Would really like to feel the support and having a great turnout in an event that a lot of us have sorely missed over the past 3 years. Another great resurrection, keep an eye on the DAS calendar because outreach is back and dates are filling in wonderfully quickly. We got Woodside, we've got Greg's event this weekend. We've got the Bellevue State Park and more to come. And then again, finally tonight, please continue to join us for refreshments and or some telescope time. And on that note of refreshments, just a final reminder, if anyone would be so kind to volunteer to take over Diana's wonderful refreshment service for the next month or maybe 2 months, please reach out to me or one of the other DAS officers. And along with that, again, for anyone who hasn't known, Jim is actually one of the founding members of the DAS back in the late 50s, early 60s. And it's so awesome that he's still active and involved with the club. Diana not only brings the refreshments, but she actually helps to bring Jim. So if anyone would be willing to help out to bring him for the next month or two, again, please reach out. He lives up in Kennett, not too far from Longwood Gardens. So if that's not too far out of someone's way, I certainly appreciate and think it's wonderful that Jim can continue to join us at these meetings. So, okay, cool. Thanks, Trace. So that's all again. Refreshments, telescopes, that's astronomy. Catch everyone later.